Hey, everybody. Have you ever noticed how the harder you try to be perfect, the more empty you feel inside? And maybe perfect isn't even the right word here. Maybe you spent your whole life trying to get it right. Like there's this thing that you just got that's kicking your butt that you're just like, I really need to get this right. Whether it's you as a man or as a partner, maybe it's faith-based as a believer or as a provider, somebody that takes care of other people. But you realize that no matter how good you are, it never feels like it's enough, like it's a destination you just can't quite reach. Today, I wanted to talk about perfectionism, not as like necessarily like a personality trait, but as a survival strategy. Because perfection, we're not going to talk in the form of excellence, but we're going to talk about how we use it as a weapon, and it's about avoiding shame, or not a weapon, but as a shield, and we avoid shame. So it's a mask that we wear when we're afraid that being real will cost us certain things like love or acceptance or belonging. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Welcome to Beyond the Facade podcast. I'm your host, Luke Gordon, and I'm thrilled to have you join me in this space today. What we're going to be doing is diving deep into the trials and triumphs and truths of seeking authenticity. Becoming your true self isn't about a single action or moment. It's a relentless pursuit, a commitment to self that reveals the rich connection and meaning that our life has to offer. So whether this is your first time tuning in or you're a regular listener, know this: what you're building here goes beyond a conversation. You're here to challenge, to change, and to celebrate the incredible journey of becoming your authentic self. Because when you dare to show up fully, the rewards are immeasurable. So welcome to Beyond the Facade. Let's get started.
Before I get started into the subject, I just want to say this is a promise that I'm coming through on finally. I had a couple men that read Brené Brown stuff, specifically the book Atlas of the Heart, and got to starting learning about perfectionism and the stuff that she talks about there. And they're like, hey, Luke, I want to talk about this in group. And I'm also bringing this into a podcast. So here we go. I know it's been a minute. All right. So in my coaching and in my recovery work, I see perfectionism showing up everywhere. It looks like control and it looks like over responsibility and like a lot of endless criticism. And for a lot of men, it's so deeply woven into their identity that we don't even realize we're doing it. Okay. Perfectionism is just the thing. And I want to give it a few different labels because Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, she does the most amazing job. By the way, she's one of my heroes because I came into my journey going, what is shame? Why does this exist? Like, why did God allow it to be here? And learning about it and technically its purpose and its nature was really good. And she taught me a lot of that. So if you haven't got a chance to dig into her stuff, please do. But yeah, she talks about perfectionism as a shield, as a way to protect ourselves from shame and judgment. So let's talk about why shame exists. Why is shame useful? It's because we are herd animals. We are community-based, and shame tells us like, hey, you're going to get kicked out of the herd. You're going to get kicked out of the community if you don't fall in line to these cultural rules that have been created. It signals to us, hey, you're not going to be okay. So get back in line. That's a version of shame that's supposed to be useful, that's supposed to keep us safe. But let me frame the invitation today for you. What if the thing that we think will make us worthy is actually the thing that keeps us from being free? That's what we're going to talk about. I just want to say that one more time. What if the very thing that we think makes us worthy actually keeps us from being free? I don't know why, but I'm drawn to think about money. I think that if I have enough money, I'll be free, right? But it's not even close to true. In fact, my pursuit of money is what holds me captive, which holds me bound. So what if that exists in the perfectionism? That it's like it's a destination that you can get to if you just try hard enough. So let me share some of my personal story. You probably heard this if you listen to enough of these podcast episodes. I came from a faith-based background where there was a message that was to be perfect as God's perfect. And somewhere along the way, I missed like the deeper meaning to that. I learned to hear it as don't make mistakes, don't mess up. And if you do once, don't do it again. And you really got to learn pretty quickly. And if you don't learn pretty quickly, that's not good. I was the oldest of 5 kids, early responsibility. I felt, even though it wasn't maybe directly told me, maybe not, pressure to be an example. I believe that my worth came from my behavior. So if I was good, I mattered. If I failed, I was ashamed. I didn't want to be seen in anything less than doing a good job, doing it the right way. All of that came through that. So perfectionism, if I could show up the way that people wanted me to show up, that would be the love. That would be the acceptance. And that really brought me into isolation. That kept me over there by myself. It was my armor. It protected me from shame, but it was also keeping me disconnected from others and from really the grace that I needed to give myself. So just, I don't know what version of that looks like for you. We can tie this to addiction, compulsive behavior. We can just tie this to being a human. But let's understand perfectionism. And again, a lot of this comes from Brené stuff. So perfectionism isn't about striving for excellence. It's not about the destination. It's managing perception. So it's a belief that if I look perfect, perform perfect, or believe perfectly, I won't experience judgment or shame. It's crazy, right? That's what the perfectionism is about. It's not necessarily because I want to become good at something. It's because I want to not experience that judgment or that shame. So Brené's in the book, Atlas of the Heart, she talks about healthy striving is growth-based and it's about learning. So perfectionism is fear-based. It's about proving. So we just highlight the difference there. Healthy striving is growth-based. It's about learning. Perfectionism is fear-based. It's about proving. We call it being disciplined, but really we're terrified of failure. What is the reason I show up, stay late at work? What is the reason I do what I say I'm going to do? Is it value-based? Is it really just terrified of the failure piece of it, right? We call it trying to do our best, but often we're trying to control how other people see us, right? So let's break down this into 3 protective layers. 1, control. So if I control everything, I won't get hurt, right? Criticism. If I beat myself up first, no one else can. If I can get to me first, then nobody else can beat me up. So image, if I look strong, I'll stay safe. But here's the paradox. Perfectionism promises safety, but delivers the shame piece all day long. It tells us that being flawless is going to make us worthy. And we see this all the time in recovery. I see this all the time in recovery, in my own recovery, and other men's recovery, is that this is a destination I get to meet to. If I'm perfect, if I deliver the full disclosure, get all the truth out, I won't make mistakes anymore. I won't. I'm not going to do this again. But that just brings us back to a place of shame because we find it a place where we're trying to reinforce this belief that I can be perfect. And I don't know, part of me is like, I want to say, can we I wish I wouldn't have said the word perfect so much because I don't think people walk around. I know I don't I never would have said, oh yeah, Luke, you can be perfect. But I can say I can never make that mistake again. Don't do that instead of how I respond to making mistakes. So it's just going to reinforce that belief that we're not enough because perfectionism can be achieved. Now, this isn't a pass to settle or not try to obtain something that is a miracle to obtain, which is recovery, which is sobriety, but it's to look at how we perceive the reason why we are. All right, so let's talk more about the roots that are in perfectionism. So perfectionism doesn't just start in childhood, because we do that a lot. We refer back to childhood as where do things come from, but it's built from these stories we tell ourselves, from the systems we're surrounded by, the culture we're surrounded by, and the experiences that shaped how we survive. We can look at it from the family and early conditioning, where we learned love was conditional. And I don't know, it drives me crazy to hear somebody say, oh, that's a good kid. Or we define good in types of behavior. That's what makes us good, intrinsically good. I don't believe that. I think our worth comes from not necessarily behavior, but our innate ability to do things. Maybe in our family, we had conditioning around praise came from performance, not from authenticity. Maybe it came from conditioning of being the good one or the responsible one. And it became our identity or a way of belonging. I know it did for me. In fact, I used to get that often when I was a little kid, and I was so proud of it, so proud of it. Somebody in the neighborhood, a teacher, a neighbor would come up to my parents and they'd say, Luke is such a good kid. And I remember feel so proud. I'd be like, I am. And then I'd do something that I knew would, at least I believe would change that perception. So I was like, not going to share that. I'll hide that. Let's talk about the other conditioning, the faith and the spiritual messaging. So this is something I referred to earlier, the misinterpretation of the spiritual ideals. So be perfect, becomes don't fail. So we just want to recognize the difference between surrendering versus performing, right? Okay, so here's other messaging, other cultural conditioning that existed, which is the social influence. If I do more, if I achieve more, if I be more, social media magnifies this comparison so much. And we can find other areas of our life that it happens in recovery. Like, how many days of sobriety do I have? That constant curating of how we appear and the cost we're going to trade our authenticity for approval. There's other ways that we're conditioned through trauma and emotional safety. So perfectionism, like, is a trauma response. So if I can anticipate every problem, I can prevent pain. Let me think about that. If I can anticipate every problem that will happen, if I can see it, I can prevent myself from feeling pain. Now, that's that form of hypervigilance, of staying one step ahead of rejection, but we can't. It's not arrogance. It's like fear disguised as control. So just notice that we're trying to get emotional safety, and it stems from trauma, trying to prevent pain, that pain that we experienced before, of that disconnection, that we disconnected from our community, or the fear of it that says, I can't do pain. I can't do that emotional pain. Here's another part of it, internalized shame. So as its core, something's wrong with me. So perfectionism becomes this, fix it. If I can just fix it, if I can get it right, then maybe I'll be enough. All right. So I know some of these repeat each other, or some of them are overlaying each other. So we just want to recognize that in recovery, doing recovery right is one of the most common traps. It's wanting to do it for all the wrong reasons, doing it for somebody else, for our partner, for our therapist, for our community. And then we start comparing our progress to other people, and then we start hiding. So true recovery, it's not, we let go of the control and we surrender. All right. So there's other pieces and aspects to go into this. So my invitation is you start to look at perfectionism and you start to just notice how it comes up for you. Just what's the role of shame? What does shame say? What does it say about perfectionism? How does it attack our identity? And then perfectionism and recovery, what does it start to look like? There's common patterns that start to be unfolded when we start to uncover things with perfectionism. What do? We start analyzing what our behavior looks like, and we're willing to look at it. So there's some of the details around perfectionism, but let's talk about what we can do to move forward, how we can make some shifts. I like questions that I can ask myself, because what they do is they create some kind of clarity and they create some awareness that I didn't have before. So here's some questions you can ask yourself. If I'm going to shift from performance to being more present and coming into having more awareness, the question I can ask myself is, what am I trying to prove? What am I trying to learn? Or you can ask yourself, what would grace look like right now? So a lot of the perfectionism comes from a place of self-compassion and self-love. So it's easy to do for somebody else, right? But it's harder to do for ourselves. So just thinking about perfectionism as a shield that once protected you, and it made sense to have that shield. Maybe I needed it earlier in life. I don't need it anymore. I get a chance to put the shield down. I don't need that protection that way anymore. And ultimately, there's going to be a lot more intimacy. There's healing. Let me give you some reflection prompts, maybe for some journaling if you want to tackle some more perfectionism pieces, some things for you to reflect on. So first one is, let me give you 3 of them. So where do I feel pressure to be perfect? Second one is what emotion am I trying to avoid when I strive for perfectionism? And the third is what message about worth or love still shapes how I see myself? Okay. So just grab one of them, process it, and then take it and integrate it, reflect with somebody else about it. But perfection, I'm just going to give you maybe a recap of what we've talked about, what we've gone through together today. But perfectionism, it's not a character flaw, but it is a strategy. It helps protect us. And at one point, it might have been appropriate and it did help us survive, but now it keeps us from what we love and what we want to accomplish. So anyway, it's good to spend time with you. And thank you for those who said, I'd like to talk more about this. Really value that request. All right, take care.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If this is something that you connected with, I'd love to meet with you more and talk about it. So what you can do is go to chooserecoveryservices.com or check the show notes. And there, what we can do is set up a quick conversation to meet. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Facade, where we unmask the authentic self.